Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out at the range in some really cruddy weather. It's just typical winter weather here in Northwest Indiana. But we wanted to come out and do some shooting with kind of the backbone of the Military Arms channel. The backbone being military collectible firearms. That's how I got my start in collecting firearms. I had an interest in military small arms, and some of my very first firearms were collectibles. And so it just kind of snowballed into where I'm at now in 2023, where I have quite the collection of some really cool stuff. So I've brought out some of my favorites. Now, people always ask me, Mac, what is your favorite classic firearm? That's like asking me which is my favorite child. I can't give you the answer. It changes from day to day, and what interests me today may be of lesser interest tomorrow, and I'll find something else I want to shoot. That's the beauty of having a collection. You can kind of move through it and enjoy a wide variety of different types of firearms. Now, most of my collecting starts right around the World War I period and continues on to present. You'll find gun collectors out there that like to collect Civil War firearms, people that like to collect, firearms from the 1800s and the 1700s and things like that. There's so many different nuances to collecting small arms that you can go down that rabbit hole and never in your entire life have a complete collection. And that's part of the fun, is looking for that next good deal, looking for that next cool collectible that you can stuff in the gun safe. So out here I have a few guns. Some of my favorite ones. These guns have videos out there on them, but we're just going to do a quick overview of some really cool collectibles that you can find out there and just do some shooting. It's a great day. Just have a range day here at the Military Arms channel, and we're going to bring you along for it. So let's get started with today's video, shooting these and having a little bit of fun. If you're like us at the Military Arms channel, we absolutely love collectible firearms, but where do you go to find firearms that are no longer manufactured? One great place to go, a resource that I actually like to use, is Collector Firearms out of Houston, Texas. Collector's Firearms, they'll sell you anything from a flintlock to a full auto, swords, knives, memorabilia, all sorts of stuff that can be hard to find, but they also sell modern firearms. Collector's Firearms regularly has over 12,000 guns and 500 swords in stock. They deal in all types of firearms, new and used, from modern guns to antique guns, and have guns from every price point, starting from around $100 to over $500,000. You can browse through modern and antique firearms to find your next firearm or memorabilia for your collection. There's an expert staff that's on call 7 days a week to answer any questions you may have. So please swing by, check out Collector Firearms. I wish I could link to them, but YouTube would strike my account, so I can't make a hot link in the video description, but look up Collector Firearms online and see if they have in inventory what you're looking for. One rifle people in the comment section always talk about is the SVT-40, and some of you guys have asked me to talk a little bit more about it, showcase it a little more often. I don't shoot my SVT-40s very often. They're very finicky rifles. They're not 100% reliable, and a lot of that can be attributable to, bad magazine, metallurgy, spring metallurgy, things like that. The springs just kind of wear out, like in the magazine, recoil springs, and they just get a little bit finicky, and then there's wear and tear. I don't think they're high round count guns. Don't quote me on that, but it just seems like the more they've been shot, the more of a rattle trap they are, and the more problems I've had with them. But there are springs out there. You can buy new springs, you can buy replica magazines, and things like that to kind of keep the gun up and running. So, SVT-40. This bad boy was developed in the late 1930s, around 1938, and it would stay in production through 1945. The Soviets, much like the United States and Germany and other countries, were trying to move to self-loading rifles, but then World War II broke out, and the cost of re-equipping their entire large military, replacing their bolt-action Mosin guns with SVT-40s became an unsurmountable task. And they would produce these during the war, but they weren't the primary infantry rifle. The Mosin gun would carry on in that role through the end of the war. The gun is pretty innovative, though. So the gun has some really cool features to it that we'll talk about here that really kind of, predate some other things that you might not think about. Things like the G3 rifle. What am I talking about? Well, first of all, the rifle is a gas-operated rifle, so it has a short-stroke gas piston, has an adjustable gas regulator out here. They made it adjustable so you could tune up the ammunition, but also so you could increase the gas, because these weapons were used in extremely bitter cold and ice and snowy conditions, and so the Germans would do it, the Russians did it. They would overgas their weapons to try to keep them running in those really, really adverse conditions. But part of the design feature of the SVT-40, if you take a look at this spent case, it's a 7.62 by 54R. You'll notice there's flutes around the neck. Looks very HK-ish. Well, that's because HK didn't invent the fluted chamber. This has flutes in the neck of the chamber to aid in extraction. Again, speaking to the extreme conditions in which this rifle was intended to be used. So they did everything they could to keep the rifle up and running, so it was quite innovative. Again, gas operated. The gun has a tilting bolt mechanism, much like the SKS, so the bolt tilts into a locking recess like the FAL, another rifle I'm going to show you out here this afternoon that isn't the FAL, it's kind of the predecessor to it. Very simple operation, which gives it this really, really streamlined appearance. Now, it has a 10-round detachable magazine, so you can flip this little lever down, push forward on it, and the magazine will drop out. Again, replica magazines are out there for it. But the gun was really primarily designed, like most guns of the era, to be reloaded through the use of stripper clips. You'd recharge the magazine through the top of the gun. The sights were adjustable, so you can adjust the front sight for windage and elevation. The rear sight's combat adjustable for elevation. And then you can also adjust the gas regulator. It has this very effective muzzle brake out there. Lightweight, narrow, quick handling little rifle. Chambers the full power 7.62x54R cartridge, just like the Mosin Nagant. Has a really cool safety inside the trigger guard, so you can see it right here behind the trigger. The M1 Garand would have the trigger guard safety in the front. This one has it in the rear, so a right-handed shooter could push it over very easily, fire the weapon, then flip it back to put it back on safe. So this gun, when I load it, I'll put the rounds forward in the magazine and push it back, and that's because it has a rimmed case, and you don't want rim lock, which can cause malfunctions. So I'll push the round forward and then push it back so those rims properly stack in the magazine. Or just use stripper clips, which are out there. Replicas are out there, and originals as well. Now, this gun is a little bit fickle, so I'm not going to put a full 10 rounds in it because the magazine spring is bad. This gun's all original, and so it doesn't really like firing a full 10 rounds. It will malfunction, but I'm going to fire off 3 rounds here for you just to show you how the gun works. Now, the gun also has an interesting feature. The field stripping on it's fairly simple. You just push the top cover forward, lift the bolt and carrier out back here. You can flip this up. This is part of the disassembly process. You push this forward in here. There's a little hole in here. You can push forward in that. It'll release a detent, which will drop then the trigger guard and trigger mechanism out of the gun. So very interesting design. So put the rounds in there, pull the bolt to the rear, let it go, and now she's ready to fire. Despite that full power cartridge, this little gun with its muzzle device seems to be quite pleasant to shoot. I really enjoy shooting them. Locks open, last shot fired. Really cool piece of World War II history. Let's move on to the next rifle we have out here today. So one of my favorite rifles from history, obviously, is the FAL. You're looking at the predecessor to the FAL, the FN-49. This rifle has a cool history during World War II. The Belgians were developing it, but then Germany invaded Belgium. They didn't want the Germans getting their hands on the technology, so they ushered it out of Belgium during the war. And then after the war, they assumed production of the FN-49, but later it would quickly evolve into the FAL, which would be adopted by 90-some nations to become the right arm of the free world. But this gun employs some of the design elements we'd later see in the FAL. This gun is chambered in 30-06. They were chambered in a number of different cartridges. You get 30-06, 8mm, 7mm, 308. So they were made for a wide variety of clients. This one is a Luxembourg contract gun, which gives it 30-06. This is one of my favorites because it's a nice American cartridge that's relatively available here in the United States. So these are really desirable, but these are also among some of the more rare versions of the gun, but they're out there if you want to shop around. So the gun's really, really cool. Short stroke gas piston. Has a gas plug on the end. Looks very FAL-ish, right? It'd be reused. And then when you come back here, we have sights which can be adjusted for windage. Then you have to replace the front blade, kind of an armor zeroed rifle. You have to replace the front blade to get it zeroed, and then you just kind of shoot it, and then you just make adjustments to elevation in the field for range. The gun does lock open on last shot fired, feeds with a stripper clip that recharges the magazine. The magazine can be removed, but it's really designed to be used with a stripper clip. This is a bolt hold feature right there, but it also locks open on last shot fired. Now, one thing that's really cool about the gun is back here. Let's go ahead and let that bolt go home. Back here, when you disassemble it, you flip this over very much like the SVT-40, which gives you a hole back here, which aligns with the bore of the gun. But when you put this at the the 12 o'clock position, you can push the top cover off of the gun very easily, which has your rear sight on it, right? And then draw the bolt and carrier out. And the only reason I'm taking this apart is because I wanted to show you how much this looks like an FAL, right? I mean, that is very phallish. So you can see the heritage. And that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love this rifle, because the FAL's my baby. All right, I'll put her back together here really quick. Like that. Just take your guide rod and line her all up. And that's it. She's back together. Now, it's not uncommon. I mean, they really didn't have muzzle devices. It looks kind of empty out here, but that's by design. That's just the way the gun looked. Here's your bayonet lug. Very, very cool rifle. So let's go ahead and load her up, do a little bit of shooting with her. Very smooth rifle. And I've had good luck with these over the years. Watch, it will malfunction. Put 5 rounds in there. All right. 30-06 foul, baby. Ready to go. Love this rifle. Isn't that elegant? Such a smooth shooter for 30-06. Man, I love the FN49. All right, let's take a look at the next rifle. So this rifle is definitely one of my Cold War favorites. It's an oddball. And this is the Rashid carbine from Egypt. So you had the Youngman rifle, which the Egyptians would license. They made the Hakim. The Hakim was 8mm. They wanted to downsize it. The chamber, the 7.62 by 39. And that's what they did. So the Americans took the AR-10, downsized it to the AR-15. The Egyptians took the Hakim from 8mm down to 7.62 by 39. And this gun is very, very similar to the Hakim, but it is very SKS looking. And it has a little 10-round detachable magazine, but again, it's really designed to be fed through stripper clips right here. Now, what's really interesting about this gun is this is a true DI gun. So it taps gas off, it comes back here, gas just blasts out of the gas tube, hits the face of the bolt carrier, and drives the bolt carrier rearward. The AR-15 has an internal piston in the carrier, gas is diverted in there, causes an expansion chamber with piston rings, and it springs away from the bolt face. So that is an internal piston design, which we miscall direct gas impingement. We've done it for decades, so it just kind of stuck. But this is a true direct gas impingement rifle, just like the Youngman that predates it or the Hakim. And so very, very cool. We have a charging handle here on the side and AK style sights, right? So we have the elevation and windage adjustment here in the front. And then we have combat adjustable elevation back here. Really, really cool gun. Here, this little triangular piece takes a special tool and you can adjust how much gas flows through the direct gas impingement system. And then of course we have the, come on baby, get out of there. The bayonet. So a lot of people will see these and confuse them with the SKS. Has nothing in common with the SKS other than just its outward appearance and the fact that it chambers 7.62 by 39. So these guns, not a whole lot of them came into the United States. About 800 are known to exist in the United States. Many of those are built from parts. The guns would have sand in them. They were just, when they were brought in, they were just a complete mess. They were not in good shape. Very few of them. This is probably one of the nicest examples I've ever seen. I got it from a private collector down in South Indiana. And finding one in this type of shape is kind of difficult. They are out there. A lot of them were assembled from parts kits and mismatched parts that might not work reliably. So you'll see people out there say perhaps that they're unreliable, but if they're all original, they work quite well. Again, a very, very cool piece of history from the Cold War, and not too many of these in the United States. And what's funny when you're shooting this, I can smell those propellant gases because so much gas is coming down this gas tube. It's just kind of like wafting around my face and getting up in my nose. It's almost like you're running a suppressor. That's how you can tell you're shooting a true direct gas impingement rifle. A really fun gun to shoot is the trapdoor rifle. It has a very unique operation to it. The rifle was adopted in 1873. It would have been primarily used by the U.S. Army in its rifle and carbine versions during the American Indian Wars and the expansion, the westward expansion of the United States. Now, these guns look like muskets, and they can be converted into a rifle with a trapdoor mechanism from a musket if you wanted to do so. This rifle is a produced rifle for the U.S. Army. You can still see the cartouches are sharply visible in the wood, and you'll find you can get these guns in shape in conditions like this one. You can find them in very rough condition, but most of them I find are usually in pretty decent shape. But again, you just have to shop around out there. Now, the trapdoor is really cool. You'll have different versions with different sights, different barrel lengths, all that stuff. This is just your standard basic infantry rifle. Here you can see the sight, how it pops up. Isn't that cool? You have like a little V-notch back here. Then you have a little aperture sight. It's a really, really cool piece of military history. So it has a lock work very similar to a musket. So here's your hammer. And to load it, what you're going to do is come back 2 clicks, and that'll free up the trapdoor. This is a little lever. You just push up on this, and the trapdoor opens. That's when you put in a 4570 cartridge, former U.S. military cartridge. This one is manufactured by Steinel, and it's important that you get ammunition that is compatible with the gun. Do not put modern 4570 in one of these guns. You run the risk of blowing the gun up. They're not designed for that. These are black powder guns. Now, this is smokeless powder, but it's loaded in such a way that it's safe for use with trapdoors. Matter of fact, Steinel calls this trapdoor safe ammunition. Okay? Nice hard cast lead bullet. So loading her up. Flip that trapdoor up, take a cartridge, throw it in the chamber, loads like artillery. Rotate this back, push it down until it clicks, and push it down until it clicks. You got to get this lever all the way down, and then you can bring it to full cock, and now the weapon is ready to fire. You get 1 shot, and then to reload, 1 click, 2 clicks, and this will eject the spent case out. All right, watch this. Isn't that cool? So it ejects that spent case, has a mechanism in there for flicking it out like that. You stick the next round in, close it, bring it to full cock. 2 clicks. This gun is just fun to shoot. Jason absolutely loves this thing, as do I. Such a cool gun. So, 1873 trapdoor. Now, don't store it with the hammer down on the firing pin. Bring it back to first click, and then you want to store it that way. All right. Very, very cool piece of American history. And again, you can find these out there. They're not uncommon. You just got to find the one in the grade and condition you want it in, based upon how much money you want to spend. The Jungle Carbine. This is based on the Lee Enfield rifle, and this gun was developed to be a small, handy little rifle. It chambers .303 Brit. So it's very small, very short stock. Has a rubber recoil pad back here, but you'll see it's worn smooth, which is not uncommon. The gun, when you fire it, because that rubber recoil pad's hardened and very slick, it likes to recoil down out of your shoulder. And it's considered a thumper. When you see people talking about high recoiling rifles, many times you'll see them bring up the Jungle Carbine. Now, what's interesting about the Jungle Carbine is that the gun is probably one of the more counterfeited collectibles out there. And there's some dead giveaways when you're looking at them. If you want to buy one, first of all, do some research. I'm not going to go into great detail in this video, but do some research. Plenty of information out there talking about the fluted barrel, the design of the receiver back here, and very quickly you can identify whether or not it's a legitimate Jungle Carbine or if it's just a shortened number 4, which was very, very common for people to do, to forge them. But it has that conical flash hider on the end, bayonet lug, short barrel, and this one's one of the nicest ones I have in my collection. This one would be unissued. Most of the time, you're going to find these things, you know, with really rough wood, maybe not have much of its finish left on the receiver and barrel. So you just kind of shop around. Of course, you can, for, you know, a minimal amount of money, you can pick up one of the replicas or one of the clones that people have made over the years. Just don't get trapped into buying a replica thinking it's original and paying original prices, because there's a big difference between an original like this and a replica. Again, stripper clip design, but of course it's a bolt action, and I'm just putting the rounds in there kind of forward and pushing it down and pushing it back so that I don't get rim lock if I screw it up. There we go. All right, so yeah, very, very cool. I love the Enfield. You have the sight that folds down into the receiver. You can lift it up, or you have just the combat aperture, so you have the aperture here with graduated ranges out there to shoot at great range. Now, these things were known to have accuracy issues that they would try to resolve, so they're not the most accurate rifles. It just kind of depends on the gun that you get. So, very, very cool gun, and one of those little thumpers that you can pick up out there. You see, I just slid out of my shoulder. It just doesn't want to stay planted. Now, it doesn't hurt. When you're shooting a rifle like this, just pull it tightly into your shoulder. I mean, in my opinion, a 12 gauge, you know, with buckshot kicks more than this thing does. So when people tell you that these are high recoiling rifles and thumpers, don't be scared to fire them. Just pull that sucker tightly into your shoulder and just do some shooting with it. You'll quickly acclimate yourself to the gun. One of the things I like to do when I close the action on the infields, you see how the striker stays to the rear. It's serrated so you can just ease it down if you want, but what I do is just typically put my finger on the trigger guard with the bolt back, push it home, drop it down, and it lets that striker go home softly so it doesn't stay cocked. So, interesting rifle. This is the Jungle Carbine and 303 Brit. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, taking a look at some collectibles out there. It's just a fun hobby. There's just so many different rifles out there, ranging in prices from affordable to wildly expensive. But if you're interested in black powder, World War I guns, World War II guns, there's just tons of them out there, and there's no time like the present to look into buying one because they're not getting any cheaper. They're also outstanding investments. All right, if you have any questions, ask those questions down below. I do try to stick around for the first couple of days after a video goes live to answer questions you guys may have. If you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms channel, the best way to do that is to become part of our Patreon family. There's a link in the video description below. Also, right here on YouTube, you got the join and thanks button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Mash either one of those buttons. You can help support us here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. Thank you for 15 years of support. Swing by, check out Copper Custom, and we'll talk to you guys soon.